everyone, welcome back to Evelyn and Peter Crochet. I'm Rachel and today I'm going to show you guys how to make my Streetlight Cardigan pattern. So I had a lot of requests for this pattern. I know that a lot of people have been looking to do crochet garments and maybe are just a little bit intimidated. So I'm going to walk you guys through it step by step. This pattern is actually available free on my blog. So if you go to enpcrochet.com and just search Streetlight Cardigan, you'll find it there. Or if you want the printable version like this one, you can purchase it from my Ravelry or my Etsy shop. I'll have links to all of those in the description below, but you can follow along with me and I'll be making the size small, but I'll show you guys how to follow along with it with whatever size that you're making. So it'll be really easy. It's really beginner friendly. You'll need some bulky weight yarn. So for this pattern, I use Line Brand Softball, which is a 5 bulky weight, and then I'm also using a J or a 6mm crochet hook. So the pattern has all of the information that you need. It has the yardage count, it has how many balls of yarn that I used, all that stuff. So you can go ahead and head to my blog if you want to see that and get ready. But yeah, this is the sweater and this is what it looks like on. I'll go ahead and show you guys. It's really soft and cozy. So it's bomber style. Scoot back so you guys can see the whole thing. It's bomber style, so it's a little bit cropped and loose and comfy. It's slightly oversized, so there is some positive ease in the pattern, but it's really basic and it shouldn't be too hard for a beginner. There's only a tiny bit of shaping and a little bit of seaming, so yeah. I hope you guys like it, and I'll be releasing part 1 along with this video, and then I'm going to break it down into series to make it easier to follow along with, but we'll be starting with the back panel for this video, and then I will continue on with the front panels and the sleeves, and then how to seam it all together. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments, and I'm super excited to do this with you guys. So to get started, you're going to need a copy of the pattern. You can either follow along on my blog or get the printable version. And you will also need some bulky weight yarn. I'm using Line Brand Softball yarn, and it's a 5 bulky weight. I'm using the color Mercury. And depending on what size you make, you'll need a different amount of yardage. So the pattern has all that information. You're also going to need a 6mm or a J size crochet hook. Okay, and here's our pattern, and we'll be starting with the back panel, but before we go ahead, you need to make sure that you are only following along with the size that you are making. So I've circled the numbers that are for size small. So if you're making a medium, you need to circle every 3rd number in the sequence of numbers. You'll want to make sure that you don't get confused, so I recommend just highlighting or circling the size that you're going to be making. And to get started, we're going to begin with a slip knot. And if you need a slower video on how to do that, I have one available. So go ahead and make a slip knot, and then we're just going to start with a chain 11. So yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. You're just yarning over and pulling the yarn through the loop on your hook for a total of 11 times. And if you want to see it slower or get more practice, I also have a how to chain video in my beginner crochet series, so you can check those out. So you should have a total of 11, and this is the beginning of the ribbing on the back panel. So after you chain 11, we're going to work single crochets. So skip that first chain that's closest to your hook and work your first single crochet into the second chain from the hook. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2. Just going to do this all the way across. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through both loops. So you're going to make 1 single crochet into each chain, except for the first chain closest to your hook because we skipped that one. So when you get to the end, you should have a total of 10 single crochet made. And if you want to see single crochet slower, you can also head to my beginner crochet series and take a look at that video. Okay, and then you should have a total of 10 single crochet when you reach the end. You can double check and count. Each stitch makes this little V shape on top, so you can easily count and just make sure you have the correct amount. Okay, so that is row 1 of the back panel, which is the first row of the ribbing. And now we're going to be starting row 2. So to do that, we're going to begin with a chain 1. So just yarn over and pull through the loop on your hook and then turn your work. So now this is the start of row 2, and we're going to be working our stitches into the back loop only of the single crochet of the row below. So the little V shape that it makes, we are not going to be inserting our hook into the front loop, but we're only going to be inserting it into the back loop. So you can see I'm putting it in the loop furthest away from me. So insert your hook into the very first single crochet, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. And you can see it's in the back loop only. The front loop was left alone. We're going to do this all the way across the row. So again, in the next stitch, insert your hook into the back loop only, then work a single crochet. Again, in the third, put your hook in the back loop only, work a single crochet. And just do this for each stitch. When you get to the end of the row, you should have a total of 10 single crochet worked into the back loop only all the way across. Be sure that you don't miss that very last stitch. Sometimes it can be easily missed. So work your last single crochet. You can see that I have 10 stitches across and 2 rows made. So that was row 2 of the ribbing. And then we're going to move on to rows 3 through 45, 49, 53, etc. So make sure you are looking at your size and only paying attention to your number. So for mine, it will be rows 3 through 49. For a medium, it would be 3 through 53. For a large, it would be 3 through 59. So row 3, chain 1, turn your work. And then you'll do the same thing all the way across this row as the previous row. You're just repeating row 2 for however many rows that the pattern calls for your size. So insert your hook into the back loop only, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both loops. Do this all the way across the row for a total of 10 single crochet. Okay, and you can see that I have 3 rows. And now I'm just going to continue on and do this exact same thing until I have a total of 49 rows. Okay, so at this point you should have as many rows of the ribbing as your pattern size calls for. Mine is a smaller version just for the sake of time. I'm not going to be showing you guys the whole thing since it's just an easy repeat, but this is kind of what yours should look like. You can see that this is the ribbing on my size small sweater. So it'll be longer than my sample version that I'm working on with you guys now. And we're just going to get started on the body of the sweater. Okay, and to start the body of the sweater, we're just going to kind of rotate our work, and now we're going to be working along the side of the ribbing or the top of the ribbing, and you're going to be working your stitches into the end of the rows that you just made. So chain 2. And then in that very first area, right where your last stitch of the ribbing was made, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then also pull that loop through the first loop on your hook. So you have 2 loops on your hook now. And then yarn over, pull through 1 loop on your hook, and then yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops on your hook, and that is 1 herringbone double crochet. So you're going to do this all the way across the row. Now make your second stitch into the next row of the ribbing below. You can see we're just working them into the ends of the rows from our ribbing. And it's not too important on where you insert your hook as long as they're evenly spaced across and you end up with the same amount of stitches that you have of rows. So for this example, I made 20 ribbing rows, so I need to have 20 stitches at the end of the first row. And you can see here it can get a little bit wonky, so I like to insert my hook. You can see if I insert it here on just that top loop, it makes kind of a little gap. I like to stick my hook a little bit further down just to kind of make it so it's not as holy. It looks a little bit neater this way. But you can play around with it and just make sure that you're putting 1 stitch per row. So again, I'm making 1 herringbone double crochet into the end of each row of the ribbing. Do this all the way across. So again, you can just double check the pattern and make sure that you have 1 stitch per row. And you can see that if you made, say, 53 rows, if you're making a size medium, then you should have a total of 53 stitches at the end of this row. Okay, and you can see that I've reached the end of the ribbing, so I'm going to work my 1 last stitch into that very last row of the ribbing. Make sure you don't skip it by accident. Okay, and then you can double check your stitch count. You should have the same amount of stitches as you did for ribbing rows, and you can check by just checking and counting the posts, or you can rotate and look at the top of the stitch and make sure you have the right amount by checking how many V's you have. So I made a size small and I have 49 herringbone double crochet. A medium should have 53, a large should have 59. So next we're going to begin row 2 and follow rows 2 through 27 will be my count. So make sure you're checking for your size but for the size small is 27 rows. So rows 2 through 27 is just repeating the previous row. So chain 2, turn your work, and then to start row 2, you're just going to work a herringbone double crochet into that very first stitch. So don't skip any. I'm just going to work it into the top of the stitch of the row below. Make sure your hook is going through both the front loop and the back loop. So you yarn over and insert your hook under that V. So you should have both the front and back loop on your hook. Yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through that first loop on your hook. Yarn over, pull through one loop, yarn over, pull through the last 2. You're just going to do this all the way across the row. Your stitch count is not going to change. It'll stay the same for the rest of this back panel. So all we're doing is just adding length to the cardigan. So you don't have to worry about any increasing or decreasing. Your stitches will stay the exact same. So do this all the way across the row. Okay, and you can see that I made my way back down the row. Your stitch count should have stayed the same, so just double check that. And then make sure that you're not working your last stitch into that chain 2 because that does not count as a stitch. Make sure your last one is in the stitch of the row and not the chain 2. So then just go ahead and chain another 2 and turn your work. And to start row 3, it's going to be the exact same thing. Just work 1 herringbone double crochet into each stitch of the row below, all the way across the row. Your stitch count will stay exactly the same. And you'll just repeat the same thing over and over and over again until you have the correct amount of rows that your size calls for. So you can see I'm doing a small and I'm making 27 rows. 28, 29, 30, just goes up higher for every single size. So just work 1 stitch in each row across. Once you're done, you can see that it'll be a large rectangle like this. Those are my seams. I've already seamed it together, but you'll just have the back panel. So it'll be 1 large rectangle. If you want to make your cardigan longer, that's really easy to do. Just keep adding rows until it's as long as you want, but you will have to adjust on the front panels as well. And that's it. When you get to the very last row that you've made, you're just going to yarn over and then pull the yarn through the loop, and then you can go ahead and just cut your yarn. I'm not going to cut my yarn because I'm going to show you how to make the other panels using this same ball of yarn. So the back panel is complete, and then we're going to move on in the next section to the front panels.